now for a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning. Let's bring on Constance Ikwoku, our analyst.
Good morning, Yolanda.
Good morning.
Desua and today. Charles.
Good morning.
How are you guys this morning?
Fantastic.
Great. So look at the papers with us this morning. We have Chuks Akunna. He is the Executive Director of Authority newspaper. Hello there and welcome to the program. We'll begin with this day. CDS, terrorists getting foreign funding to continue destabilization of Nigeria. The Chief of Defense Staff General Christopher Musa has told Nigerians that some of the surrendered terrorists and those apprehended by troops were in possession of foreign currency. What's the solution then? General Musa says the military is discussing with foreign partners to trace and block such sources of foreign terrorism financing. I mean, this information is not new. We've always known all these years that part of the oxygen that has sustained terrorists is foreign money. Nigeria has been battling with terrorism since 2009. So by now, it begs the question, isn't there a framework already to stop this kind of funding, Chuks?
No, it's a very, very difficult, I must tell you, because these fundings do not come, you don't physically see these people who come to fund these terrorists. But I must tell you that, I had met some military officers a few months ago, and they actually told me about the collusion between particularly foreign aid organizations and these terrorists. And these are in form of giving them food. And if you're able to give terrorists food aid, under the guise of giving aid to internally displaced persons, these foreign agencies, end up, transferring this food to terrorists. So when you're able to feed terrorists, I mean, what stops you from giving them money? Nigeria has been very, very active, globally, particularly in West Africa, during ECOMOG, in restoring peace in countries like Sierra Leone and Liberia. So it's befuddling that, here in Nigeria, we are unable to defeat these terrorists since 2009. So the CDS knows what it's talking about, and there needed to be concerted efforts by all to actually stop this kind of sabotage by foreign.
You have not plugged in headphones. Plug in and try again.
So, yeah, I mean, there's need for us to actually stop this funding from international bodies and agencies.
Okay, the Punch newspaper this morning, inside story, how hubris intrigues power play sealed Obasa's fate. Deputy Speaker Miranda sworn in as Lagos' first female speaker. Sanwo-Olu claims innocence. We've heard about the sudden impeachment of the Lagos State Speaker Mudashiru Obasa over allegations of fraud and financial infractions. This report says Obasa was in the U.S. when lawmakers convened and embarked on impeachment process. Obasa has now, he has been speaker since 2015, and his deputy Mojisola Miranda has now been sworn in. Intrigues indeed, Charles. This was quick, and the governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, is already claiming, I have no hand in what went on. How is it even possible when most governors control their state assemblies?
All right, so who asked Sanwo-Olu whether he was involved
Exactly.
or not? I mean, that makes it all the more suspicious. Excuse me, but then this happening when Obasa was not around also shows the degree of influence he must have wielded both in the State House of Assembly and in the House of Assembly. He's been in that position. He's been Speaker of the Lagos State House of Assembly since 2015. So he has outlasted how many governors? I mean, he's been there for a while and he's quite an authority. Back in 2020, he faced this corruption scandal that many thought would bring him down. But I mean, right after the smoke blew over, he was still sitting pretty.
Right.
So somehow, I guess the undercurrents have been there all this time, but he's probably been such a formidable foe to deal with that his opponents had to wait until he was conveniently out of the way before upstaging him the way they did. I mean,
probably maybe not as formidable as he thought he was.
Oh, but the guy used to look so smug.
He did, but you know, this is what they say about flying too close to the sun. You don't know when your wings are going to melt and then you will fall. Because just 3 days before he was impeached, there was a very important news report by People's Gazette saying that Lagos Assembly spent 43.5 billion naira on backup vehicles for 40 members in a massive looting under Speaker Obasa. Now that was the headline there.
So is this the first time he's been Speaker since 2015? Everybody has been benefiting all of a sudden. I hear he has, you know, governorship ambitions.
Yes.
He's still a member of the House of Assembly, by the way. It's not that he's been yanked off completely. So I don't know what happens with his governorship ambition. But the other angle is that there was no investigative report, you know, that indicted him. So he was just removed unceremoniously.
Unanimously too.
Yeah. Okay, the Guardian newspaper. USSD codes may become inactive in 14 days over banks' 250 billion naira debt. Indications are that telecommunications operators will suspend the operation of the unstructured supplementary service data, USSD, offering in 2 weeks over non-remittance of the monies or charges by deposit banks, and this has accumulated to over 250 billion naira. For clarity's sake, USSD allows customers to transfer money digitally on their phones without internet service. So this is a very important offering that they have for customers, especially in rural areas. As of July 2024, there were 231.1 million active bank accounts in Nigeria. Of these, a large percentage of users are linked to USSD platform, at least 70 million people. Certainly, this is going to disrupt the banking community as well as users significantly, Chooks.
Yes, not just in rural communities. Some of us have at one time or the other used USSD service, you know, particularly when the amount is not more than 20,000. You know, it's very convenient because you do not require internet service. But it's very sad that banks will be owing telecom companies. You use their services and then remittance becomes a problem. It's good that the NCC is also backing the telecoms companies, because 250 billion is a huge sum. It's a huge sum of money, and it goes to show us how weak our enforcements are, because this has been going on for, from what I read, you know, up to 6-7 years, when telecom companies have been, you know, shouting themselves over rooftops that banks should actually back up this with money, with payments they should remit. But it's good that, you know, push has come to shove, and now, you know, it's blown in our faces.
All right, let's see Daily Independent. Battle for PDP National Scribe position deepens party crisis. The People's Democratic Party is once again in the eye of the storm. This time, Samuel Anyanwu resumed office as National Secretary against the order of the Court of Appeal, which asked Sunday Ude Okoye to take over the position in its judgment of December 2024. This has divided the National Working Committee, the Board of Trustees, and other members of the party, with everyone taking sides. Adesua Charles, with the PDP, I mean, this party has been embroiled in one crisis or the other.
Yes, I mean, the PDP drama continues with the different factions. We have different factions within states that we've seen the what's happening in River State and the court cases there. We have different factions in the National Working Committee. Now, you know, we have factional leaders of the PDP. It seems every organization in Nigeria has factional leaders except for the APC.
I wonder.
Very unique. Very unique that they're able to keep it together there. But, you know, also when we're talking about, just very quickly, because we were talking about this USSD thing and the issues that Nigerians suffer the most when big men or big institutions fight, because the banks that are being asked to pay this money also had 3.7, I believe, trillion naira in forex profits alone in just last year. So these are people who have a lot of money and are refusing the telcos money, the telcos who are begging for an increase in tariffs because they're losing money. So banks are getting profit they've never seen before. Telcos are losing money and suffering losses, and the Nigerian people are the people who are going to suffer at the end of the day.
I was going to say, I wonder if there are no regulations guiding the structuring of these debts and the repayment terms. I mean, you just can't give loans like that and not have terms for collecting.
CBN,
There are charges they're supposed to take and remit to the telecommunications companies. And they've always complained that they are cash strapped, the telecoms companies. So, I mean, this is part of the problem, isn't it?
Yes. And the CBN did say that the banks should pay up, and that is what, CBN is in charge of the banks, and for them to essentially ignore it, the same way they're trying to fight the windfall tax that the federal government is also going after, it shows a bit of, I don't know what to say, but it leaves a bad taste in my mouth when it comes to the banking sector.
Or maybe they should go to court too, like the PDP secretary, Sunday Udeokoye, went to court, obtained judgment, and this time around we have someone probably in flagrant disregard of court orders resuming office. Well, I am still wondering how the erstwhile ruling party will survive the storm that has been gathering over time. I mean, it's about 2 years away from election year. I just wonder how they'll survive this. I mean, if they really need, or if they really think they are going to upstage the APC in 2027.
The New Telegraph, let's look at other papers quickly. Over 60,000 surrendered Boko Haram members, children, according to the CDS. Wow. That's a lot of people and their kids. 2027 cracks in Tinubu's camp as Lagos Assembly removes Obasa. We also have Daily Sun here. PDP crisis worsens again. Why national grid will continue to collapse, according to Minister Clark, accuses governors of manipulating legislative process, stifling LG autonomy. We have Daily Trust as well. How Boko Haram killed 40 farmers in Borno, according to survivors, victims for mass burial. I mean, FG confirms bird flu outbreak in Kano. Let's move on to the international headlines now. Daily Graphic, Finance Minister designate promises economic relief. Dr. Kasiel Ba-Forson says he'll work hard to lower prices, stabilize the Ghana cedi, and create jobs towards lowering the cost of living for Ghanaians. Yolanda, the first thing that I noted here is that we already have a minister designate. Mahama did not waste time. He didn't spend 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks. He was prepared, apparently.
Yes, he was prepared indeed. I echo the sentiments from yesterday when I was saying that his moves seem very strategic, and I think this also gleans from his previous experience in power. He now knows what to do, and he's coming back stronger. And I'm hoping that these promises by this finance minister designate will yield results.
Talking about being prepared, it appears the finance minister designate is already prepared. He already has a plan of action. He already has been analyzing the problem and also, talking about the solution. So this appears to be someone who already has a good grasp of what the situation is and already prepared to take over effectively the office for which he's been designated.
And let me just also add that it somewhat puts a little bit of competition, because with the Ghanaian finance minister putting these promises and Nigeria that's just next door having similar promises for its people as well, let's see who will be able to pull out the big guns to, bring their people and their economies out of these financial strains.
Okay, Citizen newspaper. Arrest after mass killing. Gunmen went on rampage, killing 8 customers. The shooting occurred last weekend when a gunman entered the liquor store and opened fire. 6 victims were declared dead at the scene. 1 discharged from hospital, while 2 others remain under medical care. Chooks, there's a lot of talk about crime rate in South Africa. This definitely brings into focus, again, gun violence in that country. Chooks, can you hear me?
We all remember reggae maestro Lucky Dube, who was killed by fellow South Africans, they said they thought he was Nigerian. And we've seen a lot of gun violence in South Africa. And that calls to question how guns are regulated in that country. People take a gun, go into public places and actually open fire. And it's really, really, really it's very troubling, that this is happening, and this happened a few weeks last week. It's a very trying period for South Africa, but then, time and again we hear of this gun violence, in that Southern African country. Tragic, if you ask me.
Trying time indeed. Let's look at Kenya, the Daily Nation. Maria Sarungi, my 4 hours ordeal at hands of abductors. Kenya has been in the news due to rising cases of abductions in that country. In the last 4 years, we're told that at least 50 foreign nationals have been abducted or killed in Kenya. The latest is Maria Sarungi, a Tanzanian activist who has luckily been freed. We also remember that it was in Kenya that Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, was abducted and bundled to Nigeria. Yolanda, worrying, it seems like Kenya is becoming the abduction capital of Africa.
Well, I wouldn't tout it that, I don't know. But what I do have to say about this story is that I wish that she would shed more light on why she thinks that this is a targeted ordeal, because we need to be able to differentiate between the two. And if more details are not exposed to the public, then there's no way of knowing. It becomes he said, she said. And it also says that she remains undeterred, vowing to continue her activism. Is this something that she might be using to, push her own personal agenda? I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
Personal agenda was the woman was abducted.
No, not the abduction. The abduction is not in question. I mean, the fact that she says that she believes the ordeal was in an attempt to intimidate her without details about it. Absolutely.
But to be fair,
our own kind of abduction here is usually abduction for ransom, abduction for money. So in this case, it does appear this was not an abduction for money scenario. It was probably an intimidation tactic, according to what she said.
Yes, but there is a history of this when we think about what goes on in these areas: Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, and Rwanda. We've seen a history of it when you have opposition leaders or dissidents being in their neighboring countries, because their state security services do work together for important reasons. But it also means that sometimes you have activists or opposition leaders who are kidnapped or disappeared.
Right. Let's look at the U.S. President Biden had his final address yesterday, and so in next week, actually January 20, the president-elect Donald Trump will be sworn in. I mean, Chooks, do you think the world is ready for a Donald Trump?
Waiting with bated breath, if you ask me. It's going to be very interesting American presidency for Donald Trump. Don't forget that he's doing his last lap, after he wouldn't be eligible for re-election. So he's going to take very, very drastic actions that are going to change the world. And a lot of people are actually apprehensive. World leaders are apprehensive. The European Union is apprehensive, and so is Africa. Middle East, every part of the world is apprehensive about what the Donald Trump presidency will bring for the world.
Roller coaster it's going to be, I think. Daily Star, finally. The Prime Minister gives embattled Chancellor the dreaded vote of confidence. There on the front page, we have a caricature of what is supposedly Rachel Reeves, who is the Chancellor of the Exchequer. I mean, this looks savage, that face there. Reeves is taking a beating because the pound is taking a battering as well. There's stuttering growth, and there is a growing backlash from business community. I mean, it can be easy. Reforms are always tricky, even if they are sorely needed. In this case, Reeves' moves to balance the books does not seem to be going well with anybody. You guys, anyone can jump in here.
So I think that people can have their own opinions, and the UK Prime Minister has actually expressed full confidence in her. So I think the brunt is really on her for her to prove herself.
It appears Starmer's government is moving, should I say, stumbling from one crisis into the other. Remember, the Prime Minister himself appears to have been under some pressure from none other than Elon Musk, and then within his own government
but
too.
But that was a retaliation.
Oh, well, retaliatory or not, it actually put some pressure on him. I mean, someone
All right.
actually scheming to knock him out as a prime minister. And now the issue of his finance minister, or is it finance secretary, having
Chancellor
to deal
of
with
the
the
Exchequer, yes,
chancellor,
like
yeah, okay,
finance
having to
minister,
deal with the economy. I
Okay.
mean, apparently.
It's a 14-month low for the pound, but you also have to understand that they're coming to us a very tumultuous post-conservative changing of power and possible mismanagement of the economy, which I think the shortest prime minister in history. She's now suing or asking for a cease and desist because she's being blamed for a lot of what the British economy is facing right now.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Chuks Akuna, Executive Director of Authority Newspaper, for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Constance Ikwoku, for joining us today on Daybreak. And that's all the time we have for you. I am Adeso Gibalsage.
And I'm Charles Eruka. It's goodbye from me.
And I'm Yolanda Robert. Please do keep it here on Arise News. The morning show is next. Goodbye.